It is not my fault. It is not my fault, I swear. I was merely seeking knowledge and power, just like any other magician. When I found the Necronomicon, I thought I had struck gold. But the secrets I learned from that eldritch tome were far beyond anything I could have imagined. The power I possessed was incredible, but it came with a cost. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that Hastur, the king in yellow, appeared to me. He whispered promises of even greater power, and I couldn't resist. I was so desperate to gain more power that I willingly let him into my mind. At first, it was just whispers, but soon his voice was all I could hear. He promised me the world, and I believed him. So it is not my fault. It is not my fault that I released Hastur upon the world. I thought I could control him, that I could use his power to achieve my own goals. But I was wrong. The moment he was free, he began to destroy everything in his path. I tried to stop him, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with a feather. So it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the world is in ruins. I didn't know that Hastur's power was so great. I didn't know that he would destroy everything in his path. All I wanted was more power, more knowledge. And now, as I stand in the ruins of what was once a thriving world, I can't help but wonder if it was worth it. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the sky is always red now, or that the ground is black and scorched. It is not my fault that the few remaining people who still cling to life are twisted and insane, their bodies warped and mutated by the toxic energies that now saturate the air. It is not my fault. It is not my fault that the oceans are gone, replaced by endless deserts of ash and bone. It is not my fault that the stars no longer shine in the sky, that they have been blotted out by some ancient power beyond my understanding. It is not my fault. It is not my fault that the very fabric of reality is unraveling, that strange and eldritch things are now appearing where once there was nothing. It is not my fault that time and space are no longer what they used to be, that the laws of nature have been bent and broken. It is not my fault. It is not my fault that the few people who are still alive are now living in constant fear and misery, that their lives are a never-ending cycle of pain and suffering. It is not my fault that they will never know the joys of life as it once was, that they will never experience the simple pleasures that we took for granted. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the world is dying, that everything that was once beautiful and good is now twisted and corrupted. It is not my fault that the very air we breathe is poison, or that the ground beneath our feet is cracking and shifting. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the world is now ruled by monstrous beings, creatures that should not exist in any reality. It is not my fault that these beings delight in the suffering of others, that they seem to take pleasure in destroying everything good and pure. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the few humans who survived the initial onslaught of Hastur's power are now living in a constant state of terror. They huddle together in their small communities, hoping that the next attack won't wipe them out completely. But it is my fault that they have to live like this, that their lives have been reduced to mere survival. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the once great cities of the world now lie in ruins, their skyscrapers nothing but twisted metal and rubble. It is not my fault that the streets are littered with the bodies of the dead. But it is my fault that I was willing to pay any price for power, even if that price was the destruction of everything I held dear. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the few humans who still possess their sanity are now forced to flee from the monstrosities that roam the earth. They hide in caves and abandoned buildings, hoping to avoid detection. But it is my fault that they are forced to live like animals, that their lives have been reduced to nothing but fear and desperation. But it is not my fault. It is not my fault that the world is dying, that there is no hope for a future. It is not my fault that everything that was once good and pure is now twisted and corrupted. But it is my fault that I sought out powers that were beyond my understanding, and that I was willing to pay any price for knowledge and control. And now, as the world crumbles around me, I can only hope that someone, somewhere, will find a way to stop the madness. It is not my fault, but it is. I was so blinded by my own ambition that I couldn't see the consequences of my actions. I wanted power and knowledge, and I was willing to do anything to get it. But now, as I watch the world burn, I realize that I have made a terrible mistake. I have brought about the destruction of everything I ever knew, and I can never take it back. It is not my fault, but it is. But it is my fault that all of this happened in the first place. But it is my fault that I let that power loose upon the world. But it is my fault that I brought all of this upon myself and the world. But it is my fault that they are living in this hellish nightmare. But it is my fault that I was foolish enough to seek power and knowledge that was beyond my understanding.